What's up, everyone? This episode of the Smoking Tire Podcast is brought to you by Policy Genius. Policy Genius saves their home and auto customers an average of $1,127 a year by shopping top-rated insurers in one place. If you're thinking that $1,127 a year is an oddly specific amount, well, you're right, but they crunch the numbers, and that's just what it is. In fact, crunching numbers is one of the things that Policy Genius does best. Their insurance marketplace makes it easy to compare rates from the top home and auto insurance companies to find you the best price. Here's how it works. All you do is head to policygenius.com and answer a few quick questions about yourself and your property. After that, Policy Genius does all the work. They compare your existing policy against others in the market to make sure you're getting the right coverage at the best possible price. If Policy Genius finds a better rate than what you're currently paying, they'll get you switched for free. That kind of service has earned Policy Genius a 5-star rating across over 1,600 reviews on Trustpilot and Google. So if you're a homeowner, head to policygenius.com. That's policygenius.com to get started. They save their home and auto insurance customers an average of $1,127 a year. Who knows what oddly specific amount they could save you? Policygenius.com. We're also brought to you by Off the Record. Look, guys, I just recommended Off the Record to so many people on adventure drives. We were driving through states, right? Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah. Most people there on this trip did not know any lawyers in those states. You might find yourself driving through a state where you don't know any lawyers. That's what Off the Record is for. Off the Record pairs you with qualified attorneys who will fight your moving violations, whether they're violations or misdemeanors, on your behalf. They'll go to court for you. They'll fight the tickets. They have a 97% success rate. They cover 90% of American districts, people. Go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST10 on the Off the Record app to save 10% off any legal fees booked through Off the Record. That's offtherecord.com/TST or code TST10 on the Off the Record app. Always fight your tickets, folks. This is a financial system that you do not need to be a part of. The insurance companies, the courts, all of them run on your tickets. Get out of that system. Offtherecord.com/TST or code TST10 on the Off the Record app. We're also brought to you by Auto Tempest. Guys, Auto Tempest saves you time and therefore it saves you money. Auto Tempest is the place that aggregates all for sale sites on the internet. If you're looking for your used cars, it brings them all into one place. You only have to type one set of search criteria instead of like a dozen. And so it doesn't matter if you make a lot of money or a little bit of money. Your time is worth money. Save it at autotempest.com. Whether you're trying to buy, sell, browse, or search for something very specific, Auto Tempest is there for you. We use it here. It helps us find cars, and more importantly, it helps us save time to go on to more important things than typing the same information over and over. Autotempest.com.
Hey everyone, on today's show we have Matt and Peter Nam, who is the founder and CEO of Gunther Werks. If you've seen those carbon fiber bodied 993 Porsches around the internet, that company is the one that makes them. So they will take your 993 Porsche and change the body over to carbon fiber and put a 430 horsepower engine in it that costs 6 figures. So Matt is going to ask him how it all began. That's on this episode of The Smoking Tire.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning, because we haven't really told the story before. What inspired the Gunther Werks brand, car, project, whatever we want to call it? Where do we start?
Well, I've been a big GT3 and GT3 RS fan my whole life, and there's this affinity for air-cooled Porsches, right? You know, I don't have to explain to you the sound, the emotional, the analog driving, and something that was always sort of missing in the puzzle was there was never a GT3 that was air-cooled. The GT3 started in the 996 era, right? And it started as a water-cooled car. And what would it be like if Porsche had made an air-cooled 911 GT3 or a GT3 RS? How would that be? So that was kind of like the genesis behind, you know, how cool would that be if somebody made that, if Porsche had made that? And obviously Porsche's not going to make that now because they're working on the 992s. And
You
the other
say
big
that,
reason,
meanwhall, there's enormous money if they do.
probably, yeah. I mean,
We're going to build 25 of them. And so, we found the lost 25 993s, and we're going to build, some fictional car out of them. Yeah.
Right.
Enormous cash in that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about that? Yeah, about that ethos of yours is I've driven first the red mule car and then this green production car. I've driven a lot of 993s. Your car is pretty far beyond what Porsche probably would have made in 1998. I think. I don't think that. I think if Porsche did make a GT3 or GT3 RS, it would not have 295 front tires. It probably wouldn't have a $250,000 engine in it. I think it would probably have 50 less horsepower. And a lot less carbon. But, I mean, it's a good place to start, isn't it?
Right. I mean, Porsche still has to mass produce the cars to make it somewhat affordable. And, Porsche's always punched above their weight class. So, like, they're always, like, the value buyer compared to, like, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini that has the same sort of performance. But this was sort of like, hey, if we had a blank checkbook and everything, the cost didn't matter, what could we do with unlimited amounts of money? And this is kind of like what we ended up with,
How much of a pair of balls does it take to create? Did you start with a customer? Because you have another business, Vorsteiner, and and that business connects you with, I'm sure, an array of really interesting characters, some of which probably take a cost no object approach to modifying their existing supercars, Did a customer approach you and say, let's make this happen? Or did you go head first into going, let's build a cost no object car and try and make a business case for it?
Yeah, it sort of started with me approaching my wife saying, hey, I can do this for $50,000, and got her in the door. And next thing you know, there was a couple more zeros added to that initial
$50,000.
Yeah. So that's,
man. You must be a very good talker.
We got to get our foot in there some way. So that's really kind of how it started, the genesis of it. And it just costs and engines and interior, it just all sort of added up and it became overwhelming. But we made it through. I mean, it was literally built as a project that I would want to pass on to my sons, because I've got 3 boys at home. And the fact that modern cars these days are just getting so digital and so computerized, where it's essentially like, you're playing Gran Turismo or Forza, it's like a computer game and the car drives for you. So I wanted a car that you can drive, and I really feel like it's my responsibility to like preserve the art of driving, just like horseback riding, right? Or golf or shooting. And so I wanted to create a car that you can drive, but has all like the good modern technology that we're used to. And my boys wouldn't get in it and be like, Dad, this has no Bluetooth, or suspension sucks, or the steering sucks, the AC doesn't work, and the car drives like crap, but it looks cool. So that was I wanted to sort of combine the best of both worlds, the best of technology we have today and the analog driving, and have your cake and eat it too sort of thing.
I think you pretty much got there. I mean, it's got, comfort and convenience stuff. It's got good air conditioning, and actually it's got, is it electric air conditioning that you have?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
It works nice. It's good. That's good. It's electric AC is good because in theory it doesn't sap any horsepower, right?
Right. Exactly. No drivetrain loss.
Yeah. And is that the kind of thing actually that regular air-cooled owners can get, or is that some custom crazy thing that you found somewhere?
There's a company in the UK that makes this, and we've wanted to clean up the engine bay and we wanted to maximize horsepower. Really, for us, the main reason was to like lose weight and take the weight from the rear and move it to the front. And the electric AC was a perfect system. I mean,
it goes in the front, yeah.
It goes in the front, in the front trunk area. But you know, I'm not going to say that this is like the best air conditioning system there is in the world. Like, I wouldn't, you know, go out in Dubai in 120-degree, you know, heat and say, hey, this thing is the best. It works just as well as the factory 993 AC system, except you don't have any of the horsepower loss, and you're transferring all the weight from the back to the front, and you lose about 10, 15 pounds in the process.
It's probably like 40 or 50 pounds of weight transfer to the front, right? It's air conditionings aren't light.
Yeah, I mean, that and all the piping that goes from the back of the engine all the way to the front that you lose. So it's pretty efficient. But
and you do end up with a much cleaner engine bay. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like, dude, my 911, like I have air conditioning in my 911, and when it's on, you don't plan on going too fast. You know, I really like, right. You know, it's not the horsepower that it, and this happens in a lot of old cars too, but it's not the horsepower that it's like the response that it takes away. And I don't like that. Yeah. I don't like it. So I pretty much just use it on the highway.
That's what windows are for, right?
I use it if it's unbearably hot, but I don't like it. I don't. It's not like I had a DeLorean, which I loved to look at and I hated to drive, and you know, it had the same type of air conditioning that sucked 30, 40 some horsepower out of the car, but it only had, you know, it had windows like this, so you were forced to run it like a lot, and so that was just misery. But regarding like the choices you made for specific sort of design cues, how do you decide sort of what car to pull that cue from, or what generation or what year? Because it's not like you made a hybrid of multiple years. It's all sort of 993 and jacked up. But like, where are the cues from?
So what we didn't want to do was, I don't want to backdate the car. That's been done before by a million companies. And we wanted to make it look like something that came out of Stuttgart, something that Porsche would have designed, right? So we almost had to like transplant ourselves in a time machine to like 1995, where we were like designing the car at the factory. And that's one of the reasons I kind of actually hired a lot of ex-clay modelers that worked at Porsche. Some guys that worked actually on the Porsche Carrera GT, 997 GT3, that are very familiar with the Porsche design language. And we said, hey, we want to make this car look like an evolution of the 993, not backdate it. But there are some historic design elements that I took, like like the front bumper. A lot of the front end, if you notice, it looks like a Porsche Carrera GT. You know, the highlights on the front bumper that Porsche designers will identify right away. And like the front and rear fenders are really, if you look at an overhead view of the car, it essentially looks like a Porsche 959. So
I haven't seen the overhead picture in a long time, but I remember seeing the red car overhead picture. Like, the front is crazy wide. Like, you can see it when the car is in the ground, but that overhead picture is really where it's at. Like, the front is crazy wide. And I mean, that's good because you get insane turn in. You get the kind of turn in that you would expect from a brand new, you know, GT3 or GT3 RS, which is quite a thing in a car with such a short wheelbase. Right. Because you have wait, do you add to the wheelbase a little bit? Don't you do something isn't the wheelbase a little different than the stock car somehow? So
the wheelbase is elongated. We want to maximize and lengthen the wheelbase as much as possible for performance. And the track width, the front and rear are completely square. If anything, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but the front track is slightly wider than the rear, which is actually like an Indy race car. which is
That's
crazy.
so crazy.
Yeah.
And especially especially because in traditionally, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, the tire width is it? Oh wait, it's square in terms of like a point to point, or including the width of the tire as well.
So the track width is measured from the center of the tire to the other center of the tire.
Okay.
That's how the track width is measured. So if you look at all race cars, they are all like almost perfectly square. Like you want a race car to be as square as possible. That's why you see like the Carrera GT or the 918 Spider. Those cars are like almost perfectly square. Or if you look at all the Cup cars, they're like practically square, you know. But all the street cars are wider in the rear than the front because they want to create that understeer on purpose to make sure that there's a little bit of safety factor built into the car.
Yeah. And also, I mean, roads versus racetracks, you know, roads have ruts, and people don't want to be like doing this to catch ruts all the time, which is the unfortunate downside of having like 295 and up front tires on pretty much anything.
Right. There is a little bit of tram railing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get
it is what
tire.
it is. I mean, if you're on a track or you're on a smooth road, no problem, you know, or if you're on a rutted up road, it could be a bit of a handful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I mean, the fact that you managed to get is it 295s in the front of that production car?
295, 335s.
And what is a stock 993 front tire? Like a 215 or 225 maybe?
I think it's like a 225. I don't know. It's been so long since we've dissected one now.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. That's so crazy. Do you actually have to start with a 993? Or can you start? You do?
Yes.
Okay. So you can't, there's no like upgrading like a 964 chassis to the Gunther spec. You have to start with the 993?
Matt, the difference between a 964 and a 993 is tremendous, and especially in terms of the rear suspension geometry. Like Porsche actually was going to apparently make the 993 the first water-cooled car, and they spent all this money updating the aerodynamics and the suspension geometry of the car. So it's the first car, the air-cooled car, that has multi-link rear suspension, right? And so
Instead
Porsche,
of the torsion beam, yeah.
Right. And they were going to make the 993. It was supposed to be the first water-cooled engine. It was supposed to be the 996, really. But they had financial trouble, and then they basically ditched the engine and just stuck the older 964 engine, air-cooled engine, into the 993 that had all the chassis improvements and all the aerodynamic exterior improvements to it. So it's kind of great in a way because you have all the air-cooled analog engine sound and feel with all the modern suspension updates and chassis updates. So there's been quite a big leap from a 964 to a 993. Like it's not even close.
No, I didn't, I thought it was a little more superficial. And I thought that some things were added. I did not realize the entire rear suspension was different. Yeah, that probably makes a difference.
Yeah, and 993s are actually cheaper than 964s. Oddly enough, right now.
That is strange. Yeah, it's actually not a terrible time to buy one. I've driven a couple. They're really nice. I mean, they're just modern enough. Even they're not crazy like your car, but they're a nice, well sorted one is a pretty nice thing to drive.
Yeah, they're actually to me the perfect size. Exterior and interior wise before they started getting too big.
I could go up to the 997 as far as being the right size, but yeah, I agree with you. I just I don't think it matters because it's no different than I just have the Targa, which I think driving impressions are embargoed, but I don't know what that means. Like all right, but it's exactly the same size as the Carrera 4S I drove last year. So the Carrera 4S I drove last year, I definitely noticed, it's a wide car. And especially, I had a friend drive a chase cam. Put a camera on his nose and chase me. And man, the Carrera, it was like pretty close. Even if you run the perfect line right down the middle of your lane, it was inches on either side before your wheel is touching one line or the other,
Yeah.
In an older car from the 90s or earlier, you can kind of run a line within your lane
Right.
a little bit, you know?
What's interesting is when we call a flatbed to pick up our cars, we have to call a special flatbed because the width of our car, the edge of the tire and the wheel, is actually wider than a Lamborghini Aventador.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just like mean to like a flatbed driver. That's like
The-
the guy pulls up. He's like, "Oh my God, I have to fucking load this." Oh no, that's so terrible.
Yeah, the guys
That's
are used to it
crazy.
now. Yeah,
That's
how
wild.
wide the car is.
And an Aventador or a Mercy. Mercies and Aventadors are pretty much the worst cars that you could have to load onto a flatbed. They're
Yeah.
right there. They're so close.
Ours is even closer, and then obviously our front end is lower, so it's a
But
little bit of work.
You got nose lift,
We do.
optional
Thank
nose
gosh we
lift.
do.
Yeah, and it works. I remember I used it on your car. Tell me about some numbers. I know it's a 430 horsepower raw sport racing engine, but I saw that since we last chatted, since I drove the car, that you've spent some time at the track with the green car and with that other yellow car I saw, which had a big wing on it, pretty kind of like a GT2-ish sort of build. It was very, very
Right.
cool. Can we talk about what these things will do on racetracks?
Yeah, so the green car right now is probably a little over 440 horsepower. So every engine varies a little bit, and it's got more than almost like 350 pound-feet of torque. The car weighs just under 2,600 pounds. And so the red car, the mule car that we had last year at Laguna Seca, with a pro driver, we did about a 133.
That's very fast.
Yeah, so we're expecting with the new aerodynamic improvements that we have, and we're going back in November to do testing at Laguna Seca, and we're expecting hopefully to be around the 129, 130 range.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that with the wing car?
Yes, we're going to need the wing because, Randy recently drove it at Willow, and he told me that, especially in turn 9 at Willow, Big Willow, he says you have to lift off because he needs more downforce, even with our winged car.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we sort of developed that GT2 style race upright wing with the factory Evo banana wing on there with wickers in the front. So that allows you to like almost save 1 to 2 seconds on the track because you don't have to lift off on high-speed turning. So aero really works.
Of course, yeah. And did you is that do you have to CAD? Are you like doing like CFD that stuff? Or are you pretty much just modeling it off of what Porsche did in period with their cars?
All of the above. We're doing CFD. We're doing taking the banana wing is essentially a GT2 FIA certified wing that we don't want to redesign because Porsche has already done all that testing. We just have to design the uprights that make it fit on our current wing. And then we have to do track testing. There's nothing that, is better than real world track testing. And the computer can tell you what it is, but you have to test it in real world and really see what it does and what the aero balance is in the front and rear. So the track, aero parts are going to be a little preview of something else, another project that we're working on that will be debuted hopefully by the end of this year, which, will be interesting.
Cool. Well, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part to make on that car? Because you do all your carbon fiber in house, right? You make all that. So what's the hardest part to make?
Believe it or not, it's the taillights.
Why is that?
So in order to make those LED taillight housings, so a normal manufacturer, when they design a taillight, they will have like steel molds that can print out, stamp out all these parts, right? So like if you wanted to make the taillight lens housing, that's like a $300,000 mold. And I can't justify that making only 25 cars, right? Yeah. It's like if I make 2,500 cars, I can justify and spread out the cost of the tooling. But we're probably going to be into like the tooling like $500,000 to $750,000 for all the little parts that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we have to literally CNC machine out all the pieces out of a block of aluminum or, you know, ABS plastic or, you know, polycarbonate. It's like blocked out. So it's like making
it's cheaper to just buy a bunch of blocks and then make them one at a time. Then, oh man, that's crazy.
And so we're CNCing one, and the reject rate is quite high because if we have the smallest scratch, we have to throw it away. Then we have to like literally sit there and hand assemble all these parts and wire it in. And I've never made lights before this project. So carbon fiber, I can do with my eyes closed, but making taillights, oh my God, it is. I'll tell you right now, I regret putting that on. I wish I didn't put it on the option sheet because it was such a massive undertaking. It's taken 1.5 years for us to finally productionize the LED taillights.
Oh my God.
It's
and
crazy.
Is every single customer taking it?
Yeah, unfortunately. I tried to talk them out of it and say, you don't want this. They're like, no,
cost is no object. You can't price it high enough. They're like, fuck it. It's how much? Can I get two? You only buying one car, but can I get 4 taillights though? Just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
It's like buying a $5 million house saying, oh, I don't want granite on my countertop on my kitchen. You know, every guy wants it, right? So it's like, you're already there.
That's so funny. But so in the last, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years, how, you know, you say you can make carbon fiber with your eyes closed, which I believe. How much easier is it to make carbon fiber parts now than it was 10 or 15 years ago? Or is it just that you have a lot of experience and the process is pretty much the same?
Carbon fiber is a black art. It is, there's so many variables in terms of temperature and the resin and it is constantly changing. So if I'm like sometimes making carbon parts in the winter when it's cold, I'll have a lot of air bubbles and I'm doing exactly the same thing 15 years in a row. And we'll have to reject the part or we'll have to sell it as a private part. So it's a very, very black art. There is so much labor involved with it. So it's not machine done like aluminum. And so it's very labor intensive. There's a lot of room for error and it's an art form because you have to lay that carbon fiber by hand. It's not done by machine. And it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. And we've sort of got the process down after 17 years of doing it, but we still go through our challenges every day. We still have sometimes parts that we have to reject, that we have to remake. It's never perfect.
How do you, like, when you've got to do one of those bare carbon builds and you've got to like line up the weave from one panel to the other, like where in the process of making that part does the lining up those two weaves start? How far back do you have to go to line those weaves up?
It's actually a very labor intensive process because I will
not surprising.
We will literally, we'll make the front fender, right? We'll hang the front fender on the chassis and then we will we'll hang a factory door and line up where that weave is like pointing towards and then mark that on the mold and laminate it, hoping that it aligns. And if it doesn't align, that part becomes primered or it goes in the trash or it becomes a wall display. And so that's a lot of the, trial and error of making an exposed carbon part is we have a like 35-40% reject rate on the carbon.
That's so crazy. No, anytime I see a car where the weave lines up across panels, I'm like, someone spent a lot of time doing that. And so that front fender you've hung, does a lot of thought go into how that weave is going to go before it's hung, or do you just like make the part and then you build the whole rest of the car around that part?
We actually have lasers that show us the direction of that carbon weave, and my laminator has to like have a laser on the mold while he's laminating it to make sure that the weave is following that laser line.
That's such a crazy process, dude. That's wild. That's
It's
so
a massive
cool.
pain in the ass.
Yeah, no, that's insane. I mean, I have 35-40% reject rate. I mean, that's like how frustrating could you get? I mean, it's like your whole job is like double work at that point. It's just double work sucks.
But it's still easier than making a taillights, I'll tell you.
What you said you're making 25 400 Rs.
Yeah.
Have you sold them all? You said, I mean, Joe said the waiting list was quite long. Have
Yeah,
you deposited them all?
we've got about we've got about 75, 80 people right now on the wait list. And
Yikes.
we're going through the production slots and we're contacting the people on the wait list, and we're, depending on where they are and who they are, we allocate their production slots. So it's got about 2-year wait list right now, and then right after the coupes, we're going to start transitioning into the Speedster.
Oh, got it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you got 25 coupes when you say
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Right.
And then 25 more speedsters presumably, or maybe some more than
Something
that.
along those lines. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
We're still figuring it out.
all right, and then we get to guess what's after that, like the Targas and whatnot. Like I would be interested to see what you could do with a Targa. I think that could be fun, actually. I think your company, if you took a 993 Targa, because that had the power glass, right? It had a power glass roof. If you replace that glass with like a power carbon fiber roof, that could be kind of rad, actually. It could be pretty fun. Like just a huge sunroof. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. After the Speedster, we're going to go into the forced induction area. So,
Oh, yeah, right. There's a whole world to be explored there, too.
Right.
I mean, I guess, right, a 993 GT2 is like, what, a 1.2 million, right? So
Something like that. Yeah,
so,
I think they got close to like $2 million.
Are they really? Well, if
Yeah.
that's even better, that means there's room underneath that for your product.
All right.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man. What about like, I mean, yeah, I went to your facility, and your facility is too big to be making just 25 cars. you got a big building down there, man.
Yeah, we do. Not as big as yours, but yeah.
It's definitely bigger than mine. My building's 11,000 square feet. Isn't your building bigger?
Oh, really? It looks a lot bigger.
It's because it's vertical, bro. It's because we stack them to the ceiling. For a couple minutes, I thought about doing the podcast out there on the top rack, but then I decided ultimately it would be very echoey in there.
It would suck during the summer as well with no AC. Yeah.
Bye, Derek. Come on. My detailers. Sorry. Thank you, sir. I will see you in the morning.
It's Thursday time?
Sure. Wait, 8:30? Yeah, thanks. You don't need to be a half hour early this time.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Shout out to Detail Works. Detail, WERKS.com. Derek Bemis. The dude is the gangster. He's the best detailer in Los Angeles.
I know Derek. Yeah.
You know
He's done a lot of
Derek?
work for us. Yeah.
Oh, really?
McGuire's.
I
Mr.
wish I knew.
McGuire's.
Yes, Mr. McGuire's, dude. He was
Yeah.
down there doing my my little red car. That guy rules. Yeah, I wish I would have had him come around. I wish I knew him. I wish I knew you knew him. Man, so God, I want to know what goes at the tail end. So we got turbos. Okay, forced induction's fun. All right. And are you doing the same thing like with my Safari car? Lee Keen, he'll only paint one of each color. Are you making like no one can get the same color, or do you just let it? Does it whatever?
Yeah, we're very, very specific about that. So all 25 coupes have to be completely unique. So if someone did a certain color combination, let's just say like a Mexico blue with a houndstooth interior, we can never do another paint like that again. So I try and talk all my customers out of picking that same color combination, because there's only 25 to go around globally, and we want every 25 to be like their own art pieces. Like it can't be like they're like a fingerprint, so we don't want them to be alike. So they're very, very individual.
That's pretty fair. It's not so much to ask I mean, if you're going to offer someone the opportunity to like spec everything themselves anyway, like all you have to say is like, hey, just don't make it like that, guys. It's fine.
Yeah. We've had a couple of conflicts like that, and I've talked our clients out of picking that same color combo, but it's a process. But yeah, they have to be unique, so that, we don't want any conflict with, it's these cars are just kind of like a painting for a client. It's not just building a car that's mass produced.
There's a hand behind you. There's a hand sneaking in behind you. It's very funny. Just a little hand
that's
sneaking
Dominic.
in. Hey, Dominic. Oh, you got headphones. I really like. I think having them all lined up together. Are you gonna put on like a nice little event, a little rally for them to take them out? I hope they don't just get stuck away in garages and not driven. That would be such a shame.
Yeah. So we've been kind of very, very strict about that, and we actually qualify and filter out our clients. And if we do background research on the clients, for them to apply for the cars, and if we know that they are one of those guys that put this car in an air-conditioned garage and it comes back on auction 2 years later, or they never drive it, we disqualify those clients, because we want these cars to be driven. This is not something that is just wasted on rotting away in a garage. We want these cars driven hard on the road and hard on the track. So they need to be used for what they are.
I don't know if I'd be brave enough to sling the thing around a track at its full limits. I don't know. I guess the people you're talking to have a whole other level of cash flow that I just cannot relate to. But man, that is, I think it's enough. It's intense enough to drive one on the street. It's a bit of an intimidating experience to drive one on the street, just because it's so like sensory and everything like that. Like it's just like you're fizzing like, constantly. But I suppose when I borrowed it, it was like, yeah, okay, this thing needs to go back in exactly pristine. Whereas if I had paid for it, I might be able to thrash it a little more aggressively, but less worry,
Well, we got to give it back to you, because since you last drove the car, we've updated the new gearbox. We've got now a 4.1 differential on there, ring and pinion.
Mm-hmm.
So the acceleration, it feels like the car has literally 40 to 50 more horsepower.
I bet.
It's way more aggressive. Like,
do you have to have the revs higher all the time? It's just shorten every gears, right?
Yeah, it's basically everything is shortened except for 6, because we want it to be a cruising. And the engine is just now way more rev happy. So it's kind of like, like Porsche GT4, where they neutered the gearing.
The Cayman complex. We talk about the Cayman complex a lot, where the Cayman can never be as fast as a 911. So give it the same horsepower, but bad gearing.
So, I mean, the gearing is not necessarily bad. It's great for most 80% of our drivers, but the guys like you, the 20% of the drivers that appreciate the performance and drive it really hard, this new gearbox option is wonderful. And Randy loves the new gearing on it. So the acceleration, everything is elevated even more than when you last drove it. And
you don't have to beg me. I'll be there tomorrow. What are you doing? I'll be right down.
This time you can't baby it, because I saw your video and I could tell you were holding back a little bit.
Oh, yeah, holding back your $600,000 borrowed car. Yeah, a little bit. You know why? Because I want you to be like, you have to try the new one, not fucking guy, dude. This fucking guy just sunk my business. That's why. That's why.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you want me to drive it harder, but I have a fear. I drive with the fear sometimes, Such a nice car, though. I really like one of my favorite things about it is the electric power steering, which I think you told me was from the 993 GT2, which is something I didn't know at all.
So it's an electric steering pump, right? So it's still original 993 steering. It's still hydraulic. But it's got an electric steering pump assist. And actually that was used by the 993 Cup cars.
Oh, the
and
Cup
the
cars. I heard that one.
Yeah, 997 GT3 Cup cars as well. So that's what Porsche used on their race cars.
So what is other than cleaning up the engine bay from a power steering pump, what is the benefit of the electric pump mated to a traditional system?
It just helps with the steering assist, and it gives it a little more precision. So, especially with the big 295 tires.
Well, I know why you'd want to have power steering for sure. Yeah, the weight. Otherwise, the weight of the tires of those tires would be absolutely overwhelming. You definitely couldn't go like manual steering. There's some. I respect that you did it because there's definitely some builders are like, I need the purity of manual steering. It's like, bro, you put foot wide tires on the front of this thing. What are you doing? But it actually. Go ahead.
When the electric steering pump was broken on one of our cars, on our mule car, and I was in our parking lot trying to make a right turn in the parking lot, I was struggling. I was like, oh my God, this
Unbearable.
thing sucks.
Yeah.
How did my mom drive with these manuals back then?
Giant forearms and giant steering wheels. You really start to understand the enormous steering wheel when you drive the no power steering car. Yeah. My 911 has no power steering. It has big off-road tires, so there's definitely some muscle required.
That's a workout right there, especially in LA.
Yeah, it's not that bad. LA, LA is it's a lot of 90 degrees, a lot of right angles. Really, it's not so bad. If you were to do a build modernizing another car from history that wasn't a Porsche, where does your brain gravitate to?
I've got an E30 M3, and I started out as a BMW fan. BMW M was like really kind of what brought me to cars, and I think it'd be pretty epic for us to build a Gunther Werks version of an E30 M3, and we've teased the idea of it and have some concepts that we've laid out and some engineering schematics. So it's something that I would love to do.
Yeah, well, that could be very interesting because, like, how do you modernize that? I mean, the powertrain, I could figure. You figure out like you pretty much. The best BMW I have personally ever driven was an E30 coupe with an S54 engine and gearbox and a Quaife limited slip differential. Whoa, that's the car right there. It was like 2,600 pounds, 330 horsepower, short gears, and it revved to the moon. It was the jam all day, every day. It was the best.
Right.
So you just do that. But what does it look like is the real question. Like, what if you went forward from that boxy styling, where do you end up?
I think you have to sort of retain some of that boxy styling because, I mean, that's kind of the allure of that era. The E30.
You just pull from DTM, maybe?
You pull from DTM. There's some modernization, some cooling that we can add to it that improves the airflow and the aerodynamics. Obviously, make it wider because the track is very, very narrow. Put bigger tires on it, bigger wheels on it, put more aero on it, and carbon fiber the whole car. I mean, we're talking about very, very low 2,000-pound car.
That would be rowdy. It'd be very fun. That car would be amazing. You know what the problem with that is? The problem with that is going to be finding Z3 steering racks.
We would have to be, we'd probably have to make our own at that point.
The entire world supply of Z3 steering racks has run out.
Go on eBay right after this podcast and start buying them up.
I know. A friend of mine just came to visit me, and he told me that he was after he left me, he was going down to somewhere near San Diego to look at some guy's entire Porsche parts cache in his garage, stuff from the 60s, whole crate engines, all kind of crazy stuff. I don't know where the guy was, but he was selling, and there's people who just collect these parts. You know, crazy stuff. So all right. So the E30 M3, I think that's a good call. It's a good call. Yeah. It's on brand for you guys. Yeah. What does Gunther Werks even mean?
So the whole name came from Gunther Wendt, who's like an astronaut, German astronaut, and he's a German astronaut that was based out of California. And if you watch that movie Apollo with Tom Hanks,
like Apollo 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
He is the last guy that the astronauts looked at and trusted before they went off to space. They were the last. That was the last space he saw.
So that's like the guy who shut the door in the capsule, pretty much.
Literally, yes.
Uh-huh.
If you look at the
Okay.
movie, and you can look this up on Google, and he's a German based, living in California that has that German engineering precision, but based out of California. And that was sort of kind of the inspiration behind what we're doing is we're sort of taking German engineering and precision, and we're based out of California, and we're sort of melding those two things together and, making German cars better than what they can be, So that's
Yeah.
kind of the inspiration that led me to that name.
Yeah. When you're working with someone like Jeff Gamroth and Roth Sport Racing for these engines, can you kind of explain, because I've tried to say this a few times, and people don't really believe me, air-cooled horsepower is the worst value in horsepower. Your engines are pieces of art, and they're crazy expensive, and they make roughly the same amount of horsepower as a Chevy Camaro. And you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to insult you, but the facts are the facts, right?
Right.
So why does it take so much money to build a 400 horsepower air-cooled engine?
First of all, if you look at the horsepower, right? If you look at a modern car versus our engine, like our engine is still lighter than a modern engine today. Like you have to look at the weight, not just the horsepower output, right? You could make 430 horsepower and it could weigh 30% more than our engine. So it's all about power to weight, especially when the engine sits in the back of the car. And it's obviously definitely more tricky to produce that same horsepower out of a, air-cooled engine versus a water-cooled engine. But there is something romantic about the sound and the noise that engine makes out of an air-cooled. You just can't replace it.
No, I know why you'd want it. I just like what kind of crazy stuff do you have to put in an engine, in an air-cooled engine, to make that much power naturally aspirated?
Jeff Gamroth is a crazy mad scientist, and I don't know all the tricks that he has but he's basically pushing the compression and the limits of this engine on an air-cooled engine that's never been done before. I mean, he's really, really pushing the envelope, and also making it something that is reliable, that you can drive from Monday through Sunday. So, I mean, everything is forged aluminum, and we've got top shelf parts, Motec engine management system. So to me, Jeff was like, hey, we basically ticked off almost everything in the menu and used the best of the best to extract what we can out of this engine without blowing it up 6 months later. So that's yeah.
Is it even, because I've never really heard of, other than that crazy Singer Williams thing, which is a whole other level of engineering but I've never heard of more than that much power from a traditional air-cooled setup before.
Right.
How much further could you go if you were still concerned about reliability, but maybe not about street ability? Like if you built a Gunther Werks track car and the customer said, this thing's going to live at thermal, it's never going on the street. How far could we go with that, do you think?
We were actually already working on that right now.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
You would use some trick slide throttles and some other engine mapping and some more titanium components. And we're pushing over mid 450 plus horsepower.
Wow.
And torque. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's going to be on one of our next upcoming projects that we're working on right now.
That's 450 air cooled. Like, can you just spin it 500 RPM higher? Is that why you can spin it to 9, or is it more all over the curve?
It's some race car components that, like, when you're driving on the street, like slide throttles. The reason why we don't
I don't know what a slide throttle is. What's that?
It's basically like very difficult to explain, but it's like the throttle response is way quicker, but it's more fidgety. So like if you're on a street on traffic, if you use a slide throttle, which is used mostly on cup cars and race cars, it'll be more fidgety. It'll have more hesitation because it needs to be revved all the way or not. It doesn't like to be kind of in between. But the throttle response is much more faster and much more reactive than a street car. What a street throttle system that we have is more linear. So like when you're kind of like at 1,500, 2,000 RPM and you're driving in LA and the traffic light, it won't like start burping and hesitating. So those are some of the things that we can't put on a street car because it'll be less usable.
Yeah.
Obviously the engine management system, the mapping, we could be more aggressive with it because we're using better fuel. And there's just a lot of things. I can't speak about all the technical wizardry because Jeff Gamroth is really the guy that speaks about that.
We need to get Jeff on the show. I do need. I've been in between you and Joey Seeley. I do owe Jeff an appearance on this show, so I'll make sure to try and book him in the next couple of months for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I really like your car. I found it very easy to drive, and although it's intimidating because it's very expensive and it's approachable. It's not difficult to drive. I would not check the box to remove the sound dampening after like 4 hours, man. I was exhausted. And it's not, and the car is plenty refined otherwise, but I would resist the urge to cut out that last 20 pounds and I would have put the sound deadening back in.
Yeah.
But man, what an engine. The handling is excellent and the ride is good. And I don't know if any of your people are daily driving this thing. I said that I bet your customers have 20 cars, but you could daily it if you really wanted to.
I'll tell you, I daily drove it for 3 months.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that I could, put my money where my mouth is and can I live with it myself? Because I don't want to like preach the fact that it's daily drivable. And then I drive it for 2 days. I'm like, I'm done. I want to get back in my SUV.
Yeah.
But it is a daily drivable car. The only reason why I wouldn't daily drive it is if like I lived in LA like you and there was a lot of traffic and that manual starts getting a little tedious. But outside of that, it's very comfortable and it's designed just like a 911 to be driven from Monday through Sunday.
I'd like to road trip it. I would like to go on a nice grand tour with it and take it on a trip because I think it's very well mannered in that type of driving. In a cruise driving, in a see the sights driving, as well as in an attack the canyons driving and highway driving. It's very very nice. It's like all of these great analog cars like my Porsche and even my little red car and my Lamborghini and this car, it's an assault on the senses in a good way, but it also, you get stuck in traffic after a while and you get really tired.
Right.
And the only thing that would really keep me from driving Gunther Werks every day is actually the carbon seats. Just climbing over that sill every day, because it's happened in modern GT3s, would give me a bruise. So I'd get like the comfort seats. I'd get like the old man spec, maybe a Targa, something nice.
We call that in the Porsche world sofas. They call them sofas.
Yeah, like the 18-way adaptive power seats are the sofa seats. Yeah. Fuck you. I don't care. Peter, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I love your cars. I can't wait to come visit you again and drive the next thing you've got. Please let me know when you have something for me to drive. And where can everyone find you? GuntherWerks.com?
GuntherWerks.com. We're on Instagram as well. So, yeah.
Thanks very much. Sure. Peter Nam of Gunther Werks on the Smoking Tire Podcast. The Smoking Tire Podcast is powered by Shout Engine. Get your own damn podcast at shoutengine.com. It's easy. All you need is a microphone, a connection to the internet, and ideally something to say.